Hello, it's Martin from Wisely Automotive, and I'm just in front of our showroom because I'm about to depart to Manchester in this Tesla Model X Performance Ludicrous. Many reasons why I'm taking this car specifically, but basically we will take a look at two things. Firstly, as you probably heard, because it was all over the news, Teslas have really dropped in value, and we really felt that firsthand because we lost literally tens of thousands of pounds on this one because it was bought before Christmas 2022. We admit they used to be quite pricey for what they were, because even though they have that amazing acceleration, they were competing with other 60-70 grand cars. And is that acceleration and the supercharger network worth the 60-70,000 pound price tag? Well, most people thought not so. But now that the prices have dropped to about 50 grand, it's really not that far off Tesla Model 3s and Ys. So that's something to consider. Secondly, even though you can't see through this very nice private plate, this is a 2016 car. So we will examine how a 2016 Tesla fares compared to the most modern ones, because obviously, as you know, Tesla is very much a tech company first, but it may not be as bad as you may think. Okay. Finally leaving. Fun fact, the Model X is too wide to fit through the rather high tunnel, so I have to go all the way across the Tower Bridge to get to Isle of Dogs, where I live and where I'm picking up my flatmate. As I mentioned, the official reason for this journey is that I'm testing the Model X, and you know, I love the Model X, so I'm never going to refuse to drive one. But the unofficial reason is that I'm visiting a friend for a birthday party. The reason why testing a car which has been out for a couple of years is such a big deal in this case is because these early Model X's, they did not have CCS. And in fact, if we go into the menu and into the software tab and additional vehicle information, I don't know whether it will come out on camera, but it's very clear that this car does not have CCS support. So even though if I tried hard enough, I'm sure I would have found one of those CCS adapters in the office, this particular car did not have the necessary hardware retrofitted, so we have to rely on the V2 supercharger network. Speaking of which, I haven't had the chance to fully charge the car because it was in the car park for most of the day. So I'm only at 71%. On that topic, I should reset all the trip computers so we can measure our efficiency and work out how much the trip will cost in the usual Wisely Automotive fashion. And if we go back into the software tab, this car does have the enhanced Autopilot, but it's running using the hardware 2.0 computer. So if you get anything like the Model 3 or Y, you would get the third or even possibly fourth gen computer, depending on when you are watching this video. So it is a little bit further behind, and this entire screen, if I swipe very quickly, we'll see it's not as responsive as the latest Teslas, and that's because it's the first generation MCU. I only covered a couple of miles now. I am crossing the iconic Tower Bridge. Really looks stunning, especially through this massive panoramic windscreen which extends all the way over my head. I know I may be biased. I'm trying to sell you these cars and I love Teslas, but really, I think these Model S's and X's get a little bit of bad rep. Yes, they are not maybe as well built as the 3 and the Y, but the air suspension is a massive upgrade in terms of comfort. Even at these low speeds, you can definitely feel the difference. It just wafts along, and obviously you've got the benefit of being able to adjust the ride height. Also, I have the traditional instrument cluster, which we all know, but the bigger screen, which is portrait style instead of landscape, could be very, very well customized. So for example, I can have the radio on the bottom, but I can still put energy on top of that, and it doesn't cover up the entire map. So I can see my media controls, my energy consumption, and the map itself. And as I said, on top of that, I've got the instrument cluster, where I can choose to see two other pieces of information in addition to the autopilot view. Now that I'm looking at it, 150 miles projected range, and I was driving quite gently, so we will see how it goes on the way to Manchester and whether it stabilizes at a certain figure. But yeah, I'm expecting hopefully just one long charging stop. I don't think I have any charging available at the destination, so I may need to top up a little bit further than normal, but I will let you know how it goes. This will be a very real world video. Also, no ludicrous mode on the way up because I think there will be a birthday cake in the boot, so that has to survive. On the way down though, that's a different story. I keep crawling through the Friday afternoon London traffic, so it takes me about 39 minutes just to cover 6 miles. I had to park a couple of blocks away from my flat because it's absolutely packed in here, and in unusual fashion, I already managed to go to the flat, pack my stuff and I'm waiting for my flatmate to join me. I'm usually the slow one, so I'm wondering how many things I forgot, but it gives me a couple of extra minutes to set up for the journey because, as I said, I haven't really looked at the charging plan. Here she is.
Oh, that is just so unnecessary.
What do you mean unnecessary? It's amazing. We can carry 20 cakes.
Wow. Actually, that will be pretty useful.
But let's not get distracted. The destination is Angel Street. So if we look at the interior route, we have got a quick top up for 25 minutes at South Mims and then another stop at Kiel northbound.
What the f*** is that?
This is
Okay, I'm not...
Mission Command. I love it. As we set off, I didn't do anything, but as you can see, the car has automatically decided to change the first charging stop and now suggests a stop at Northampton. This is because it knows that the chargers at South Mims are busy, and in fact, Northampton being further away means we will arrive with lower state of charge, which should mean the battery will be able to charge at higher power. Once we get on the North Circular, I engage Autopilot and let it do most of the driving. Motorways and dual carriageways are where it really shines. Charging stop number 1 a bit later than expected, but it actually works out very well because we only arrived with 30% state of charge as the car predicted once the destination was put into the sat-nav. There was good availability. It was full for literally a couple of minutes, but now our neighbor has moved away. When I plugged in, the car showed charging power of 20 kilowatts. I had a mini heart attack because I thought that would be a very long charging stop, but it ramped up to 50-60 kilowatts, and once the guy next to us left, it's now at 100 kilowatts. We are already at 46%. I have no idea how long we have been charging. Efficiency so far for the trip, 393 watt-hours per mile. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head what it means in all the other units, so I will put the conversion down so you can see what it means based on where you are located in the world. And let's see how long it thinks we need to stay, because for now it's estimating we will arrive with negative 17%, so it's trying to make us stay for 25 minutes. This Tesla route planning really is excellent, but you have to keep in mind that I want to use the car around Manchester and I need to take on some extra juice. So we may do an additional stop or stay a little bit longer, but already at 55%, going fast, no problems so far. Also important, I want to note that if you are at some of these supercharger locations, please read the signage carefully, because you may need to register your car with the car park or the hotel provider to make sure that you do not overstay the free period and you do not get a fine. So here you just literally pop into the hotel, into the reception, and you put your number plate in, and that's it. With 80% in the battery and one more friend on board now, we rejoin the M1 and continue heading north. After having used Autopilot for the first section of the journey, it becomes obvious that despite the sensor suite consisting of cameras in the same locations as the newer Teslas, the second generation Autopilot computer doesn't use Tesla vision. In other words, the front radar is still active. This means you do not have to have automatic wipers nor auto high beams on for the system to work, and it can see the vehicle ahead of the preceding vehicle. If it looks like magic, check out our detailed video on full self-driving to see how that used to work. How is this situation even possible though, given the car runs the latest software and with Tesla Vision the radar got deactivated? The Autopilot 2 computer probably doesn't have the processing power for relying only on the more advanced video feed processing, so it must be running the previous driving assistant software version. Some development has still happened, because I remember when I collected the car a while back, Autopilot tried to steer me into a ditch when going over every hill crest, but I haven't experienced anything like that here. In fact, the rest of the journey is very smooth, but because of how late it is, some sections of the motorways are shut. But because we have plenty of charge, the car is happy for us to continue to our destination. The slow roads in fact mean the efficiency improves a bit, and the computer estimates we will get to Manchester with 20%. That estimate turns out to be very accurate, as I'm at 19% just as I pull into the local charging bay. The charger seems working, so I decide to park in a reserved space we have in a residential underground car park, knowing I can plug the Tesla in the following day, plus it's a shorter walk to carry all of our belongings. Big mistake. Of course, the one time I need to charge slowly, a Renault Zoe is plugged into the Type 2 socket. I'm not convinced by the selection of other AC chargers nearby, and while there's plenty of rapids, remember, this car doesn't have the CCS retrofit, so I end up driving to Tesla's Manchester South Service Centre, which also has public V2 superchargers. I am not a fan of this approach because an EV should ideally charge while it's parked anyways instead of driving somewhere just to recharge, but at least with superchargers the process is painless, and even without a fully heated up battery after the 6-mile drive, it achieves a very respectable 115 kilowatt charging rate. The 42-minute session brings the battery from 11 to 76%, leaving plenty of range for the next day. The weather is absolutely lovely, so we decide to go for a short hike in the Peak District. And when I say we decide, I mean we let ChatGPT decide. I can check the route, including the predicted state of charge, right through the Tesla app and have the navigation ready the moment we jump into the car. En route, the views simply keep getting better and better with every passing mile. Honestly, calling this a hike is a bit of a stretch given it's more of a walk on a paved path on a mountain, but it was nice to enjoy the sunshine out of the city for a couple of hours. When we get back to the Model X, I can assure you the ventilated seats come in handy, even though they may not be as strong as those in other cars. I also want to point out one impressive thing. Modern cars get a lot of hate for driver assistance systems which are way too intrusive, especially when it comes to lane keeping. However, note how this Model X barely fits on these winding country roads. Yet even with the default settings, Autopilot has not intervened or even given me a warning about crossing the lane lines once. As long as it sees that there is no oncoming traffic or I am not being overtaken, it's happy for me to straddle lanes, cut corners and avoid potholes. We drop off the friend at her flat in North Manchester, collect our things and finally set off towards London just before 6:30 p.m. I manually select the Kiel Services supercharger. We are shown as busy, and even though we have enough range to get to Hilton Park Services further south with comfortable 16% according to the route planner, we are already starting to feel like having dinner, so the earlier stop works better for us. The rest of the journey is very similar to before, with most of the time spent on autopilot, locked in at the national speed limit, using auto lane change to pass slower traffic. We roll in with 27% in the battery, and as soon as the neighboring Tesla we are sharing power with unplugs, the charging rate ramps up to over 115 kilowatts. The route planner recommends to stay for 35 minutes to get me all the way home. As it turns out, that was way too optimistic. This stop took much longer than expected, not necessarily because of the car. It was already letting me know on the app that based on the journey it was ready to go about 15-20 minutes ago, but because we were just chatting, enjoying the sun, having dinner, and I'm basically charging all the way to 100%. So at this point, even though I have to make a little detour to drop off one of the friends, I should get back to London without any charging stops and still have battery left to make it to the office. Okay, I admit I bailed out at South Mims, but it all worked out well because my friend was quite desperate for the bathroom. So this will literally be a 5 to 10 minute top up. It's usually quite a busy site, but at this time of night it's quite empty and everybody is following the correct V2 supercharger etiquette. So cars are spaced apart, meaning that nobody is sharing power. The Model X jumped to over 120 kilowatts the moment I plugged in, even though I was still at about 30-something%. And now I'm at 41% car saying 29% unreliable. So basically, when my friend gets back here, we are good to go again. I'm back in the showroom, so let me point out a couple of things in the summary. If you already drive EVs and you look at the trip data, the efficiency may stand out a little bit at 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour. I know if you drive a BMW i3 or a Hyundai Ioniq, you will probably get double that, but keep in mind for the size of this car, it's actually quite impressive. Yes, the weather was nice, but we were running the air conditioning as normal and heating when the sun set. For context, compared to, for example, the journey I did with the Polestar 2, I know these are not directly comparable because the temperatures were a bit lower and it wasn't really a loop test, but that car achieved 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour, and it's much smaller. It literally has half the interior volume of the Model X and is also less powerful. As more of a direct competitor, I did a 1300-mile road trip in the Jaguar I-Pace last year, and that also achieved 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour, but yet again, that is also a smaller car with less power. If you want to, I will leave that video linked in the top right hand corner so you can check that out. In terms of charging, I did 4 stops in total while I was en route, all of them at Tesla superchargers because of the CCS situation. But if I tried to do it properly and I actually plugged in on the night of arrival in Manchester, I could have kept the car plugged in overnight and therefore saved myself 2 charging stops, which would have cut the total charging time for the trip basically in half. Nevertheless, all of the charging, including the charge at the office before I set off at the 34p per kWh, which was the government mandated maximum price at the time of the road trip, adds up to just over £100. Keep in mind, I arrived with unnecessarily high state of charge back here, so to just cover the distance, we used about 209 kWh at a total of about £86. To put that into comparison with the diesel vehicle, to cover the same distance for the same money, it would have needed to achieve about 45 miles per gallon. So definitely possible for something like a Passat if you drive very efficiently, but it will definitely not have the performance and the space of something like this Model X. A more direct competitor is something like a BMW X5 or a Porsche Cayenne, and we have very accurate numbers for that because Arthur actually runs a diesel Porsche Cayenne for some of his longer journeys, and we use it for occasional towing duties as well. And with no trailer, no load, at motorway journeys, that car achieves about 37-38 miles per gallon with a 3-litre diesel engine, an automatic transmission and an all-wheel drive system. So you can see, like for like, even with the unprecedented times we are in, with high electricity prices and very low diesel prices, the EV still works out cheaper to run, and as before mentioning regular maintenance and so on. Of course, the story gets even better if you can charge at home or if you have a dedicated EV electricity tariff with a lower nightly rate, because at that point you're looking at numbers which are impossible to achieve with any combustion engine vehicle, regardless of size and power. Note, however, that there is a very small difference between charging a Tesla publicly on superchargers and charging at home if you are on the standard capped 34p per kWh, which is now dropping to 30p per kWh. And that's because Tesla has been really aggressive with keeping supercharging prices low as the energy prices have started to come down. So realistically, if you do a lot of long journeys and you want an EV for environmental, tax reasons, whatever, Tesla still is the way to go. It's not just because of the availability and the convenience of the supercharger network, but their cars are really efficient for their respective segments. They can charge quickly, and as you can see, the pricing is just a cherry on top because you're not really paying a hefty penalty if you can't charge at home. Obviously, that's the hard numbers, but now let's look at the Model X as a car because there's a lot more to it. I already mentioned some of the pros, like the air suspension, the absolutely gigantic size, which is actually very well utilized on the inside. With these 5-seater versions, all people are going to be comfortable. Even 5 adults will fit in, no problem, as long as the person in the middle, second row seat is a little bit shorter because obviously you've got that spine running down the middle of the car, which holds the Falcon Wing doors. And on top of that, because you've got no seats underneath the boot floor, you've got massive underfloor storage in there as well, and a huge trunk under the bonnet too, so you really are covered. The seats themselves are a bit different to Model 3 and Model Y seats. They're a bit firmer, but you can definitely feel the extra size again. They are quite a bit wider and they are very supportive with adequate side bolstering. Obviously, this version also has the perforated leather with the ventilation as well. Next up, the first generation of the infotainment system run on the NVIDIA Tegra processor is a lot less bad than I expected. Obviously, it's not as slick as the latest versions of Tesla's infotainments, but it still reacts to touches very quickly, so any of the interface bits or the map may take a while to load, but it's not really frustrating to use because you don't find yourself having to tap the same thing multiple times just trying to get the car to register that you are trying to do something, which is especially crucial for the touch keyboard because if that doesn't run properly, it can really drive you insane very, very quickly. It also has the latest user interface just like the modern Teslas, so you've got a customizable dock, for example, where you can put different apps from the app drawer or control shortcuts. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the ability to section off the screens to show all the data you want at the same time means that you don't pretty much have to use the touch at all while driving because you can see everything at a single glance. So props to Tesla for still supporting their products, even though they've been out for many years, because that can't be said for any other manufacturer. Because even if you look at other products which do supposedly support software updates, they are usually just little bug fixes here and there. Whereas with these Teslas, you can really see the progression of the features and the interface over time. It still also gets cellular connectivity. I first thought it had premium connectivity because that's what it said in the software screen, but I think that was just a glitch because the moment I tried to use Spotify, it wanted me to pay the £10 a month for premium connectivity. If you don't mind a little workaround and you're going to be using the additional features only once in a while, what you can do is you can pair up your phone as a hotspot to the car, and there is now a new option, again thanks to those software updates, where it lets the car be connected to a Wi-Fi hotspot even while you are driving. So you just need to tick that option in the menu, and then you can tether off your phone to, for example, stream music directly through the car's infotainment system, because the quality is a lot better than trying to stream over Bluetooth. The last bit which we need to discuss is the lack of CCS on this particular vehicle. Look, the upgrade is only £211, and that includes the fitting of the hardware into the car and the actual adapter as well. So in our eyes, it's an absolute no-brainer. Definitely go for it. It's worth it. In fact, I don't know why we haven't done it on this car. If you're interested in buying it and you want the CCS, just let us know that you saw the video, and we are happy to contribute those £200 so you can get that fitted by Tesla, because it really opens up a lot of charging opportunities, and not just on the third-party networks, but a lot of Tesla superchargers have switched to the third generation of superchargers which only have CCS. The car is still clever enough, and it will not direct you to those if you don't have the adapter fitted. You should also get a little bump in power, because the car is currently limited to about 130 kilowatts, which is what I actually saw in the real world as well, through the DC Type 2 port. But with the CCS, you can get about 145 up to 150 kilowatts. And these batteries should still be able to take it. There's a lot of talk about Tesla throttling charging speeds, but you see, even with the mileage this car has done, it still seems to be going full power. And because of the nice weather, I haven't really even seen it try to precondition before supercharging stops. I suppose the biggest question is, would you rather go for a Model X or something like a Model 3 or a Model Y? As you see, there's Model 3 right behind me. We love those cars. They are very good at pretty much everything, as long as obviously you know what you're getting yourself into in terms of size, range and so on. But they are almost too good, and they do lack a little bit of character. Still fun to drive, but the Model X, maybe because it's of the sheer size, the doors or the panoramic windscreen, or simply just because they're a bit more rare on the UK roads, it really is a little bit more special. In terms of comfort, you've got the air suspension, the bigger seats, and much more interior space. So I would say don't automatically dismiss it as an outdated car or anything like that, because that definitely is not the case. Also, they get a little bit of bad reputation for build quality, and we do tend to agree they used to be quite rattly and squeaky, but I don't know how it's even possible, because this is the pre-Raven example. So in other words, there was still a version after this which had some under-the-hood improvements to the drivetrain, the dampers and so on. Yet it's somehow the most solid Model X we have all ever been in the entire team. So it just goes to show that there is a little bit more nuance when you're shopping for this, and definitely getting the test drive is recommended so you know exactly what you're getting yourself into, both in terms of the build quality and the trim, to make sure that that meets your expectations, and that you've got all the features you want, because, as I said, some of those things like the ventilated seats got discontinued. But later on, features like the cold weather package with heated rear bench became standard. Would I go for it over its direct competitors? Well, there are no direct competitors really in that price bracket, because anything like the Jaguar I-Pace, Audi e-tron, they are smaller cars, and especially over those two, if you need the size, this is a better option. It's still very efficient, and it charges a little bit quicker than the I-Pace. And the e-tron, I mean, we do retail those, so I have to be careful about what I say, but I personally really don't like those cars at all. So as with anything, it's very much a personal choice as well. So yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about the Model X. Do you have a driveway big enough to fit one? And as always, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.